Hi, I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and thank you so much for tuning into one of our talks today. Today, we're joined by the wonderful Cristina Rodlo to talk all about her latest movie, No One Gets Out Alive. And I wanted to start by talking about your relationship with Santiago Mangini, who's the director of the film, because you've mentioned how especially because obviously for a film, you're usually never shooting in order, and there's such an internal emotional journey that your character goes on throughout this. And so
Yeah.
you wanted to have a lot of conversations with him to have a lot of clarity so that you always knew what space your character was in and what were some of those conversations that the two of you had up front and some of the details that you wanted to make sure you had a lot of clarity on before you started filming.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. And that's exactly what happened. Like we literally went scene by scene. I'm in every scene of the film. So we went scene by scene to have clarity on what I was going to do in each scene and how I was going to portray Amber. Not so much about rehearsing it, but about talking about it and about like really going into detail of how I was seeing Amber at that specific moment. And then he would share how he was seeing her as well. And if we were not on the same page, then we would talk even more, and be like, okay, so how do we manage to be on the same page? Because obviously making a horror film, it's so difficult because you don't have all the elements. Everything, it's about like most of the things are about imagination, right? So we need to be on the same page. So for both of us, it was very important to be on the same page all the time, because if there was one moment where I was imagining something different, then it wouldn't match or it would look weird. So definitely was a lot of like table work between me and him. Like every day pretty much we would talk about how we felt, how we see the next scene, or like, yeah. And like before the shoot, they brought me to Romania where we shot everything, like almost 2 3 weeks before, for me and Santiago to really be like on the same page and to talk about Amber every day, literally.
And the way that it builds all of the elements of horror through suspense and a lot of tension, it's not about something necessarily happening at every beat. It's more about as she learns more information about what's going on around her, that's actually what builds the suspense. So it again makes it a very internal journey. And how did that influence the way that you were thinking about it in terms of your performance, and what are the aspects of your performance that then influenced, or were you really just coming at it purely of a space from of character?
Well, yeah, I mean, like you said, I mean, the movie is not like the scare for the scare or the jump for the jump. Like it's really, you're going through Amber's journey the whole time, and you really have to fall for Amber in order for you to feel for you to be afraid of what's going to happen. Um, so for me, it was like what I usually do for my characters is like I do a playlist of what they would be listening at that moment in their lives. And obviously they're all very different from one another. So with Amber, her playlist would be the music that she listened when her mother was alive. So to me, it was like listening to those songs that in my head were the songs that she listened with her mom in the hospital for the last 3 4 5 years. She didn't have any friends. Her mom was her everything for those years. So for me, it was very like I was always going back to the songs, and because the journey of Amber is losing her mom, being alone, and being in a different country, different language, and not having money, not having a family. And she would always go back to her mom. So that's where I like, for me it was very important to have that playlist all the time and always like have it in my mind, because that would be my connection to Amber's mom, to her mom. uh and also because we were not shooting everything from like lineal, everything was like um for me it was very important to have clarity on what Amber was doing at that specific moment, because there were moments where when she was happy, where she was like sad but was still okay, and there was moments where she was like going a little bit crazy, and then there were moments where she was losing it completely. So for me it was like really really important before every scene to really check where Amber was at that specific moment, so I wouldn't get lost in between doing one scene one way and then another scene another way. And and then Santiago or the producers will come and be like, is this the way she should be? I'm like, yes, this is the way she should be. Like, I have it in my, like, I know this. And they trust me, like, during the whole film, the whole shoot.
Yeah. I'm really glad that you were bringing up her relationship with her mom, because that adds so much to her as a character in terms of the things that we learn about her, and her backstory, as well as a lot of the emotional side of who she is as a character. And obviously she's going through that journey of, like you said, having been very isolated because she put everything on hold in her life to look after her mom. But there is that moment in the film where she also admits that there was a sense of relief when her mom finally passed away, because it was the thing that gave her the ability to finally pursue things for herself for the first time in a long time. And was it important to you that as a character, she was still kind of wrestling with some of her guilt around that a little bit, because it felt like that was playing off on screen in your performance?
Yeah, 100%. And also by being Mexican, like Amber being Mexican, we as Mexicans, we grew up with a lot of guilt since before we're born, because Catholic is very into our, like, even if you're not, it's very into your mind, into your mindset, and into your heart. And so, and they put a lot of guilt into you. So for me, it was very important that yeah, for her, it was a battle between her dreams and doing the right thing and staying with her mom, and then feeling guilty that she died. And like, it was a struggle all the time. And then it was really hard to play Amber, because at the same time I wanted to bring joy and hope to the character as well, but then many things kept happening to her, so it was like really hard to find those little moments. But I hope people did find them, and I think I did. I think I did find them, and there were some scenes that were deleted at the end, but yeah, I mean, it was like a lot of struggle to find the fine line between the guilt and showing like an art, to the character, when many things happen to her. Like, it's like one thing after another, like,
There's also a lot of tension that comes with your character, because she is in a position where there's details which are put into the script and are very real to her world as well. Like, she can't call the police when things start going awry and when she's being taken advantage of. And there's that scene in the diner where even just the presence of a police officer walking in and hearing that radio chatter, she doesn't even turn around to look and see, but she absolutely completely knows. And you kind of shift your body language a little bit in that moment. And did you and Santiago also talk a lot about a lot of the external pieces around her and a lot of those very real day-to-day elements that also cause a totally different type of tension in the movie?
Yeah, I mean, I think for both, for Santiago and for me, like the real horror that we wanted to express and to show in the film, it was the horror of not being able to contact the people who were supposed to help you, and because you're an immigrant, so you cannot contact the police, because whatever they're going to do, it's probably going to be worse to whatever you're like encountering right now. So for her, it's like, well, whatever this is, whatever is happening in this house, I think this is better than whatever I'm going to get, so for us, it was very important to show that that's why she doesn't leave. Like, she has like a really good reason to stay, because whatever is out there, it's definitely scarier than whatever it's in the house. So yeah, we talked a lot about that. I mean, both being he is Argentinian, Brazilian, Canadian, and me being Mexican. Like, for us, it was very important to at least send I mean, still a horror film. I mean, there's no doubt about that, but it's still, we wanted to send our message, and to talk about immigration 100%.
Yeah. And within that as well, there's also the added element that there's a lot of things that she can't reveal about herself to people around her. You know, there is the moment where she tells someone that she's undocumented at work and then she's completely taken advantage of. And that's one of the very few instances where she tells the truth. And even with her uncle, who she doesn't necessarily know, even in that familial situation, she's still not able to give them the full picture. And yet you still have to be able to play to all those aspects of her as a character and all those aspects of her backstory within your performance. Was there a challenge in terms of figuring out how to convey a lot of things that she can't express to other people outwardly?
Yeah, well, it was it was really hard. It was really hard to play Amber, and I mean, the whole time for me, it was like it was a mix. It was a mix of again of her having dreams and having made it to the States, which that by itself, it's not easy. You know, when you're an immigrant and you're illegally in a country, she already went through a lot, right? And then she finally manages to make it to the States, and it's like, okay, something positive in my life, you know, like I want to put that in there. And then it's like, well, but I don't have the money, but I'm working at a place that I hate, that is horrible, you know, but I have a friend, finally have a friend, which is, then she betrays me, but I have someone that I think I can trust, you know. And then it's like, well, the relationship with my uncle that I've never met, this is the first time that I see him. Like when we see the scene, it's like the first time that Amber sees him as well. So, and then she cannot say the truth because he's the one who's getting her a job by being American. So like all this conflict, for me, it was very important to always find hope in those moments, you know. And I think her hope was going back to listening to her mom's voice message. You know, that's the moment where she's like, okay, I can still do it. I can do it, you know, it's still possible. If I went through all of that with my mom and I'm already here, I can make it work. So for me, it was very important to find that balance and to make Amber as human as possible, you know, like for people to really connect with her and being like really vulnerable.
And exactly to that point of the resolve that she has as a character, where, you know, as you said just now, she's been through so much, even just to get here, to get a job, to get a place to live. You know, she's managing to do all of these things, which are hugely insurmountable in the day to day at the same time. And then when things start happening in the house, there's a different type of resolve that has to kick in for her and a different place that has to come from within her. And so how did you want to play those two very different types of grit and strength and resolve within her as a character, stemming from the fact that they're for different reasons and different circumstances?
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of also talking to Santiago and like him like telling me as well what he wanted, what he needed at that specific moment as well. Like in the house, it was more about the ghosts. It was more about like the sounds. It was more about all those things. So for me, it was more about playing it in my head and talking to Santiago a lot and being like, okay, but what's the sound? What's going to happen? Right. Like what's happening? Like just be very clear, you know? And for him, it was like, well, this is what I imagine, but at the same time, we have VFX and we don't know if it's going to match what I'm thinking as well, you know? So at the house, it was more about imagining and really seeing those moments, like really seeing it in my head, like whatever, like when he would tell me like, okay, so your mom is going to cross and then it's just going to appear and you jump out, like something happened, like you wake up of the dream, like really seeing it in my head, you know, like that was the main thing for me, like when we were in the house, to really see everything, even though nothing was happening, because everything would happen in post-production. Like for me, it was like really having the images in my head.
And similar to that as well, even within the house that you said, there's moments where she sees her mom pass and there's obviously a specific type of jump in response to that. But at the beginning, when she starts to suspect that things are not necessarily right and something's very off kilter, it's because of her curiosity. So she's almost stepping into situation. She hears a noise coming behind a door and she goes to look. She sees a record player and picks up the headphones. And so again, was there kind of a difference in how you wanted to play the scenes where the tension's building because she's going looking for things and she's trying to piece together information versus something's literally happening right in front of her and there's obviously a very different type of visceral response to that?
Yeah, like I'm laughing because during those scenes, it's like the typical scenes where you see in a horror film and you're like, why? Why would you go? Like, why? And because if you don't go, then you wouldn't have a movie. So that's like one of the things, right? So for me, it was like, okay, I need to find reasons for people because I love horror films. So, and I'm one of those people who are like, come on, why? So for me, it's like, find a way to make it like her curiosity. It's not because of the house, like obviously because of the house, because everything is weird and they look weird and Red is nice, but at the same time, like there's something weird. And then he has a brother that I didn't know, and then I see, and it's fucking gigantic. Sorry for the bad word. But you know, so for me, it was like, okay, why would Amber go, like the moment you said, go to the room that Red already said, don't go there. And obviously she goes there. It's like, why would she go? Like, why? What's the reason that she would go there? And for me, it's like, okay, if you're new to a place, right? Like specifically country, you want to know as much as possible to learn like not only the language but the culture. And she's in Cleveland. She's not in LA, she's not in New York where she would meet a lot of like Latinos, right? She's in Cleveland where she probably won't meet any Latinos, right? So it's like, okay, so I need to get into this culture, right? That's what I had in my head. Like, okay, so I need to get into this culture, and the reason I'm going in is to see if I can find a way to connect with these people, right? And whatever I feel or think that is weird, maybe it's just part of the culture that I don't know. So that's what I had in my head when those scenes that we usually think that why would this happen, I would have in my head.
And what was it like shooting a lot of those scenes in terms of the relationship that you had with the camera? Because, you know, going back to what you said at the beginning, you're in every single frame of this entire film, and the camera never lets us look away from you and your performance. And particularly once we get into a lot of those scenes, there's a lot of, you know, there's obviously a lot of close-ups that come within that medium as well. So there's a lot of intimacy that we have with your character through the camera.
Yeah, I mean, from the very like beginning, before we started shooting, Santiago said to me, "Well, you're gonna be like literally, we're gonna be very close to you. Like this is how I want to tell the story. I want to be close to you, and I want you like really. I want people to really see you, to really see every expression of you." So I was like, okay, great. I mean, obviously it's great, but you get really nervous because all the weight it's on you, literally. So for me, it was like that. It was talking a lot to Santiago and being like, okay, so we're right here, right? So everything has to come through the eyes and not a lot of like movement or anything, because then it feels a lot, right? So again, it's like being in the moment, and it's hard to be in the moment where most of the scenes are by myself. Like a lot of the scenes are by myself, so it's really hard to like really be in the moment, imagine everything, you know, like all those things. But that was the task for me. Like it's like just be in the moment, just be there, just imagine it, like really feel that this is happening, right? That really feel, because if not, the camera is going to read it. They're so close that they're going to read it. They're going to read that you're not feeling it. They're going to read that it's not actually happening in your body, you know? So that was the main thing for me, to really really feel it and not cheat anything, because sometimes we have a lot of tricks as actors to cheat and people sometimes buy it, right? So in this one I was like, there's no way I can cheat this out, like I have to be there.
With the fact that you're bringing up that idea of filming scenes where the camera is so close that it requires a certain stillness and really just channeling everything through emotion in your eye, you've also talked before about how when you worked with Nicholas Winding Refn, that there was a lot of that as well, where you'd be shooting 10, 12-minute scenes and he would be like, just stay as still as you can. And there was a lot of physical stillness and lack of movement for that as well. And so did you find that you worked with Nicholas, that you've kind of carried a lot of that through to subsequent roles and characters in the way that you think very differently about how stillness can convey a lot of communication with a character as well?
Oh my God, yes. I mean, working with Nick changed me completely. I mean, the way he directs, the way he works, the way he directs actors, it's like, it was something completely different for me. So being on set, and like you said, he would be like, okay, so 20 minutes scene. Yeah, just want you to stand there and just be. Yeah, but what's gonna happen? It's like, no, just there, don't move, and nothing, don't move at all. You're like, okay, right. But you need to trust your director a lot. Like, in order for you to do that, you definitely need to trust who you're working with, and that's what I did. And obviously, after I saw Too Old to Die Young, I was like, okay, it definitely works. I mean, you need, like, because Latinos or Mexicans, we express a lot with our hands, right? So for me, when the first time what Nick said to me, like literally on the first day, when he said, okay, so pick a place where you want to stand on this scene. I'm like, well, what do you mean? Like, I want to move, right? He's like, no. Where do you think your character would stand or sit? If you want to sit, like where? I'm like, okay, well, I picked a position, and then he's like, okay, so you're not going to be able to move, not even one hand, not even one finger, not even an eyebrow. You're not going to be able to move at all, and everything has to come out from your eyes. I was like, oh, well, that's a challenge. Okay. And it obviously changed, and it changed for me, because as a Latina, I would be like, no, that's not possible. I need to move. And then it's like, no, it's possible. And it's more powerful because everything comes from within. Right. And then people really have a connection with the character and can really feel what she's feeling.
And jumping back to the movie, when it comes to the place where she's physically defending herself and she's physically fighting, those scenes come from such a raw, guttural place. It's not that she has any sort of skill set in fighting, and in fact, she comes across as a character who's probably never gotten into a fight in her life. But this is complete sheer survival instinct. And so, how did you want to choreograph those scenes with it really coming from such a place of just raw, guttural instinct within her?
Well, in the beginning, they wanted to have double, obviously, because they were like, we're afraid, like, we don't want you to do that if something happens. And I mean, you're the lead and you're in every frame. So we don't, I'm like, I'm doing it. Like, guys, there's no way I'm not doing those scenes. And they were like, are you sure? We're still going to have the standing just in case. I'm like, no way it's going to happen. Like, I'm doing this. I'm doing the scenes. And for me, it would come from like, she has, like, throughout the film, she has suffered a lot, right? So she's finally, like, she saw her uncle dead, literally, like, before she goes upstairs, she sees her uncle dead, and she's like, I mean, this is it. Like, if I'm gonna die, at least I'm gonna die beating the shit out of these people, So I'm for me, it was like, all this anger that she has, not only because what has happened in this last week in this house, but because what has happened throughout her life in the last 25 years, right? So that anger, it's like, it's a buildup. It's like, you meaning Red and Becker, you're gonna suffer like you have no idea, So that was for me. For me, it's like, oh, this is it, like, I'm taking all out, and whatever happens.
I love all of the different spaces that you managed to take your performance within the film. And so, congratulations on everything with the movie. And thank you so much for sharing all of this, Cristina.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.